welcome to Dubai Future Horizons, presented by Dubai Future Foundation and Remote Daily. I'm Felix. I'm so happy to see so many of you join from all around the world. We just did a recount and we are here together across 21 time zones. That's almost the whole planet Earth. And you're in for 75 minutes, including live music, mindfulness, an interactive conversation, a community share where you can join us on the virtual stage, all here, all for you and with you. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, hi out there watching the live stream. You can also see who else is there. You can comment, you can ask questions there as well, or you can come to the Zoom room, meet the community where it's happening. We already see Dubai in the room, Islamabad, Sharjah, Croatia, Amsterdam, Tawi in the Philippines, Oman, India, Fiji, of course, Dhaka, and Amsterdam and Align. Wow, please share where you are joining us from. We're visualizing your contributions on Menti, so please click the link in the Zoom chat or pull out your phone and scan the QR code that you see on the screen share right now. We would love to know where you are at the moment, whether that's in Singapore or in Ireland. It's a global community, and I'm in New York City, and I'm already looking forward to say hi to our guests in Suva in Fiji. I just got up. She's about to end her day and we're connected. This is Horizons, a year-round journey towards the Dubai Future Forum. And we host these sessions for all of you to connect, to learn about the forum and the Dubai Foresight Awards today, and to discuss really big, really hard questions. And today is no exception. Our question today is, what does it take to turn foresight into action? What does it take to turn foresight into action? What a big question. And before we get to our guests, we kick off with Executive Director of the Dubai Future Institute, a member of the Dubai Future Foundation team that is making this all possible here, who leads many projects that put foresight into action and also launched the Dubai Foresight Awards last year. And he's here right now live from Dubai. Patrick Nowak, welcome to Horizons, Patrick. It's good to see you again.
Great to be here. Nice to see you, Felix. Thanks for putting the show on, as usual, in such a wonderful fashion.
Patrick, you must have thought about this question that we're tackling today so many times across your career. What does it take to turn foresight into action, to go from recommendations and papers and research to policy, to things changing? Why, without giving away too much about our guests that are joining us in a minute, why did they win the awards? What stood out to you about their approach of turning foresight into action?
It's a combination of things. It's a combination of things that we were looking for, and in the projects that were awarded in the end, they demonstrated that it's a natural extension. It's not just the thinking, it's also the doing. It's the networks that are built in the instances. It's the involvement of communities. It's a deep understanding of what communities might need, but also how you can bring foresight practices to people in a meaningful way. And that's a really challenging thing, because also often, and I think a lot of people on this call will identify with this, very often you spend a lot of your time in meetings explaining what foresight is all about. And then people kind of get lost along that road before they even start thinking about what kind of impact could be achieved through foresight. And so that's what really stood out with the projects that have been awarded in this round, in the 2025 round of awards. It's that ability to be meaningful, and to be meaningful to many.
Wow, and I'm so excited to introduce them in just a minute. Before that, though, you just mentioned it, the Dubai Foresight Awards 2025. It was the inaugural year. Why do these awards actually exist, and what is the sort of long-term vision?
To us, it was a natural extension. So it's last year, 2025, was the 4th edition of the forum. And every year we're looking for something new. We have been thinking about a set of awards for some time already, because, as I say, it's a natural extension. We convened 2,500 futurists from around the world last year, from almost 140 countries, 139 countries. They come together, they talk about their work, everyone's super excited about the kind of work that they hear about and they do themselves. So why not make it not so much competitive, but why not create that opportunity to highlight and really showcase some of the amazing work that's out there? So to us, it was very much a natural extension, but it was also an experiment. I'm really happy to say that it's an experiment that has worked very well. Those of you who were on this call were present at the awards ceremony. It was just a wonderful, emotional, but also meaningful moment. And so to your question, what's our vision for that? It's something that we're going to renew again this year, and is firmly planted in the agenda of the forum going forward. So we're looking forward to yet more submissions, yet more impactful work, and just sharing the wonderful work of individuals from this very large group of countries that come to and convene in Dubai every year with the rest of the world. So it's a great opportunity for us, and I think it's a great opportunity for anyone who comes to the forum.
Thank you, Patrick. And our producer just shared it in the chat. DubaiFuture.ae/awards is where you can find out about the nominees and the winners projects this year. And you will also be able to apply again starting in May. Patrick, last question about the awards. Did you see any patterns or trends emerge from the many applications that you received?
What we might do this year is feed some of the applications through an AI bot that helps us make sense of patterns. We identified a handful. One, we saw that there were, generally speaking, fewer applications in the category of foresight for the planet. And I think that's because it is actually really challenging sometimes to demonstrate the impact of a particular project on the planet as a whole. So that's one element. The second piece that we found was that there were a number of applications that I felt, or that the judging panel felt, may have been the result of a shortfall of international development aid, particularly from USAID. So we found many applications that really came in because there was something missing. And I think the third piece is very much about foresight itself. So what we found was the diverse use of foresight tools. There's no one tool that was preeminent. There's no one approach in the foresight practice that was preeminent. So we were really impressed and surprised with the range of approaches that individuals, organizations, and entities have submitted as a way of demonstrating impact through foresight tools. So those are the three high-level elements that I would say are worth mentioning at this stage.
Fantastic. And we already had many people who signed up for today's session asking, how can I be a part of the forum again? How can I apply for the awards? There will be more information shared. We also share a contact email in the end of the session where you can all reach out and be in touch with the team. Patrick, I'm so glad that we have you in the session today. I might call back on you. For now, let's make the stage ready for our guests. I'm so happy they are here. And as I said, we are really crossing the world right now today. So from Suva, the capital of Fiji, the resident representative of the UNDP in the Pacific region is joining us. UNDP, you might know, is the UN agency that fights injustice, poverty, climate change, all the hard things. And her area of work covers 10 countries, from Micronesia to the Solomon Islands to Tuvalu. Bringing these nations together through the Pacifica Futures Report and the Pacifica Futures Forum is what brought her the Foresight Award. And if you draw a line around her place of work, it would be the largest country in the world, larger than Russia or Canada. So from the vast Pacific Ocean, from far away from where I am, welcome Tuya, Altangerel. Tuya, it's such an honor to have you on Horizons. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Felix. It's a great pleasure.
It's almost the new day where you are, Tuya. How are you feeling? How is everything?
Oh, it's great. I just finished my work, so it's about 11 p.m. and it's wonderful to be with you all.
It's 11 p.m. and you're wearing a flower in your hair. Do I see that correctly?
Yes, this is my flower from the Marshall Islands. I try to represent all the Pacific countries.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tuya. So excited to share more about your project. Joining you is a researcher, poet, and author from Cameroon who is currently in a different continent in Europe, in Cologne, at the University of Cologne, Germany, on behalf of UNESCO, and won his award through Congo Basin Futures, a project that's still well underway, where he brings together tribal leaders in his home country and is expanding it internationally into the half-dozen countries that are also part of the Congo Basin. Also impressive in geographical terms, if you measure the Congo River and all its side arms and you draw a line around it, just like I did with Tuya's place of work, you're looking at an area the size of India. So that's the kind of size of project that he is into. Welcome from Cologne, Nsah Mala. Nsah, it's so good to have you with us. Where are you?
Thank you, Felix. It's my pleasure to join you and everyone in today's Horizon. I'm doing fine here in Cologne, and the weather is average, not bad, not super good.
Cold, probably. The cold winter in the north. Hope you're doing okay. And I saw that you switched your devices, but we can see and hear you okay. So thank you for bearing with us. And we stay in Europe now and introduce the director of the UK National Innovation Centre for Aging, a global center co-founded by the UK government and the Newcastle University that focuses on innovation in aging, healthy longevity, societal impacts of demographic change. And he won the Foresight Award with his team for the City of Longevity platform that helps cities from London to Barcelona to Buenos Aires to Taipei with a large language model that helps them make their populations healthier. I hope I described this correctly. Welcome from Rome, Italy, Nick Palmarini. Nick, good to have you on Horizons. How are you?
Hi, Felix. So nice to be here. Fantastic to be with all you guys. I'm so happy and honored.
Thank you, Nick. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm in the middle of the day. I'm just ready for an Italian lunch after this.
Oh, wow. I'm jealous.
Yes.
Well, let's all test our mics. So what we do on Horizons is we give everybody a voice, and we all do that in the beginning together. So what I'm going to do now is I ask you, wherever you are in the world, to yes, hit that mute button, switch on your microphone, switch on your camera, even if it's comfortable, and say hi in your favorite language to our guests, to each other from all around the world. Be loud, be human. Let's crash the Zoom call together. Hello, Horizons community. Hi, where are you? Hello.
What?
Hey,
Hello.
Hello.
For now, I'll start with Suva, with Fiji, with Tuya, who is joining us at the end of her day over there. It's almost January 30 in Suva, and it's close to midnight. And Tuya, I'm so glad you're here to share what your team created, the Pacifica Futures Report, a fantastic read starting with a Pacific world map. I think we can share this on the screen right now. The Pacific world map is something that I invite everybody to look at. It gives you a completely different feeling from where you are in the world and makes you reflect on where the center is and where the edges are. And many reports like this one are being published in the Foresight community. There are amazing examples in there. There are amazing recommendations in there. And if we skip further, we will see that there was a handover ceremony that Tuya was a part of. But then Tuya, sometimes these things stop. The reports are being shelved. They're collecting some dust and nobody talks about them anymore. Not with you, Tuya, because you turned them into an event, the Pacifica Futures Forum. Here's the cover image that I find is so beautiful from your website. The Pacifica Futures Forum, inspired by the Dubai Future Forum, was a first. It was remarkable, and it didn't stop there, Tuya. So while we're looking at some moments from this event that you curated based on your report, please help us understand the big bets that you formulated, the actions that were taken. Help us understand how you put foresight into action from your report. Share maybe one or two concrete examples that emerged, Tuya.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Felix. And it's really lovely to be with you all. Let me begin by saying that for us, it was truly a labor of love. So it was not just something that, was kind of an output or some kind of project, but it was something that came from our hearts. And I know that my dear friends and colleagues have also joined. So we've worked together with young people across the Pacific. We worked with the elders. We also worked with the leaders, of course. We also brought together civil society activists. So it was really, in the Pacific, we like to call it the talanoa, or when we get together and have a real conversation. And so in many ways, Pacifica Futures Report tries to use the ancient or the traditional Pacific way of wayfinding. So when we say wayfinding, it's when we try to, when we see that there are patterns but the patterns need to be understood and navigated through traditional wisdom, traditional knowledge, but also inherited experiences that Pacific people carry within them through generations. So, the question, going back to your original question, is that how does this translate into, concrete actions? We were very heartened when we speak with the Pacific, for example, young people, that they are, for example, looking at patterns of migration. So it is a reality in the Pacific that many young people live outside of the Pacific. They, for example, they're studying in Australia or working in New Zealand, even in Europe. So this big Pacific diaspora, how can they, for example, become part of the future of civil service? So it's a very important question because, as you know, that migration, and this is, by the way, is a beautiful picture of the ancient map. So this was the map that was used by the Pacifica navigators to find new lands and new islands, right? So this is very important when we are trying to understand that foresight is not something imported or something that's imposed upon the Pacific. It's actually part of the culture, and we have to look at it through this relational aspect, not through some kind of theory or abstraction. So there, as you said, the 4 big bets have emerged. One of them is actually quite beautiful. The young people and also civil servants are imagining the Ministry of Canoe. So what does this mean? So the Ministry of Canoe is a virtual ministry that a young girl living in some very rural and maritime island can access. And so you navigate the public services like as though it's a canoe. So you can open up either a virtual, or it can be also a physical place where you can actually bring together, for example, experts and diaspora experts, young people who are also Pacific Islanders, but they're residing somewhere else. And they bring the mentorship programs or upskilling programs. And so we're imagining a civil service of the future that is fit in the current realities. Of course, we don't shy away from talking about the current challenges, because there are so many challenges that the Pacific Islands are faced with. In 2 days, Felix, I shared with you that I'm going to one of my favorite countries. It's Tuvalu. Tuvalu is composed of 6 atolls, so very small strips of land, and the surface area is just 26 square kilometers. But at the same time, that nation, always inspires me. And for example, one of the big bets is Tuvalu's Digital Nation Initiative, because they also understand the realities at the forefront, being at the forefront of climate crisis. the sea level rise, it basically threatens to, demolish the small islands and the land mass that they have. But they want to literally but also digitally, if you will, rise above that sea level rise and have a sovereignty that's embedded and rooted in cultural preservation. So I really hope that our audience can check the Digital Tuvalu Initiative, Digital Tuvalu Nation Initiative. And it's actually something that's happening in real time right now. So this has also inspired the Pacifica Futures report, but then also the Pacifica Futures Forum inspired, some of these countries to take this forward and really shining that spotlight in the indigenous and traditional wisdom and experienced lives that have experienced by the Pacific Islanders themselves. So
Wow.
in this way, it's the ownership. The ownership is not with some international organizations, right? It's the ownership is within our young people, within the nations themselves, within their elders. We also talk a lot about the intergenerational divides and how also we create that space so that our young people are also able to speak and co-create together with their elders. Maybe I'll stop here, Felix.
Thank you. Yes, it's so fascinating to hear how civil service of the future might be remotely or hybrid. It's fascinating to hear that a nation like Tuvalu calls itself the first digital nation, and that others, because of your initiative, are now taking an example for that. And you brought them together. You made it possible for them to learn from each other. And you also brought a question to the room, Tuya. You ask, how can the Foresight community, how can everybody who is here address the most immediate threats to biodiversity on our planet? We could spend, as with every single one of you, spend an entire hour just discussing this. But maybe there's somebody who is in the room and who is hearing this right now who thinks, well, I can share something. I have an idea. I'm working on something, or I'm hoping that something happens. Please use Menti. We are all so excited to hear your ideas, your suggestions, what the Foresight community can do, that Tuya and her team are doing in their part of the world. Maybe you have an experience from your corner, where you live, where you work, that you want to share. Please use Menti, use the link in the Zoom chat, and use the QR code that's being on the screen share right now if you're watching the live stream to help us collect ideas. Tuya, why are you asking this question to the room? What are you hoping to learn?
Well, traveling throughout the Pacific, I see that our blue Pacific Ocean holds the keys to our future survival, but also it is home to the greatest biodiversity in the world. So, it breaks my heart that this biodiversity and the species loss is happening at an alarming speed. So I was reading some statistics that I don't know, every day, once one or two species are lost, well, forever, they go extinct. And when you see the reef, the beautiful reef dying, they emit this ultraviolet lights. It's like a SOS signal, right? So I've seen that happen in our beautiful waters. So it's a very immediate reality of our Pacific, islanders, and they have a intrinsic connection to the ocean, to the fish, to the biodiversity, and they've lived for millennia in harmony with this beautiful, awe-inspiring Pacific Ocean. So that's why I am asking this question, because I think it touches the hearts and lives of every Pacific Islander.
And contributions are already coming in. Work on mainstreaming alternative models like bioregionalism, visualize future scenarios to induce a sense of urgency. We're going to talk about that in a second. Invest in education, narrative change. So suggestions are already coming in. Nick and Nsah, when you listened to Tuya speaking, is there anything you would like to add or to comment? Nick, I was looking at you first because I think when we hear about digitizing wisdom, when we hear about whole entire states turning themselves into digital entities, I'm sure this must speak to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating somehow also going against the stereotypes that digital should be in, let me say, digital, historically digitalized areas of the world. And that's, I think, is something wonderful that we are able to combine and leverage what are the, the emerging technologies that every day help us see the world differently and just take the different cultural spiritual, logical way on how to use it and apply to our future. That's, I think, is the most fascinating. We know in Europe you have Estonia, which is one of the most digitized country in its public sector system, and it's interesting. Again, it's not probably one of the most known or biggest country, but that's how you leverage the tools that you have available and take advantage of them just to make impact. I think it is the most fascinating point coming from Tuya.
Thank you for saying that. Tuya, I remember when I learned first about you, I thought the small countries, they host oftentimes the solutions for the future. And thank you for emphasizing on that, Nick. And we see many more suggestions here coming in from the community. Center indigenous and local knowledge as early warning systems. Translate futures into policy triggers and hard decisions. Shift investments and economic signals. Oh, wow. Such big conversations here. Participate in future conferences and networking addressing most immediate threats to biodiversity. Tuya, I think you're working on continuing the Pacifica Futures Forum. But before we close this story and go to the next big topic here, Nsah, is there anything you'd like to add to Tuya's story?
Yeah, very inspiring work and timely. There are striking connections and similarities between the work that Tuya and that team are doing and also the work that we've been doing on the Congo Basin, which I think I will be speaking to in a bit when I go also deeper into my own project. But at this level, I think I wanted to also comment the digital aspect or the aspect of digitalization, both as a way of having a kind of a twin nation that is completely virtual, that is inspiring, but also the digitalization of civil service, because I think this is something that can also be inspirational to some countries and many countries, I would say, around the Congo Basin on which I'm working, because we've quite often, but not always, live a lot in the past, in the sense that if you see a civil service where everything is still very, a lot of things you need to physically come to report to the headquarters in Yaoundé before you can have certain documents treated for you, even if you walk maybe to the extreme north of the country. These are things that we can then learn from and go digital more and more.
Fascinating. Thank you, Nsah. And wow, how many contributions just came in from all of you around the world. Thank you so much for sharing. Tuya, thank you so much for being here and for sparking this conversation. And I would suggest to move from the Pacific to the Atlantic, Nick. I guess it's maybe an appropriate geographical shift to do, because I learned that your work has spread from London to Barcelona to Buenos Aires. Now you're also crossing across other parts of the world, and you turn foresight into action with your City of Longevity platform that gives city governments very concrete suggestions for a healthier population. And we brought some screenshots here from your City of Longevity toolkit. 2008, the first time in human history, most of the population found themselves living in urban rather than rural contexts. So you can already see how many years we have now been living beyond this tipping point. And your achievement in this toolkit, and I highly recommend to check out the City of Longevity project online. The toolkit is constantly evolving, being updated. This is also part of foresight and putting foresight into action, Nick. There's many updates happening to your platform all the time. But can you help us understand, Nick, how you make sure that action really happens? We just heard from Nsah and from Tuya bureaucracy, civil service, there's so many barriers. There's geographical barriers, there's experience, there's technological barriers, and you work between languages, between time zones. So based on the research, based on the platform that you and your team are building, what is something that you can share with us where you have seen Foresight really turn into action?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for giving us the options to talk about this thing. It's literally a honor, as I said in the beginning. I think there's a forecast, which is something that we know is going to happen, the population aging, and there's the foresight. It's very different how these population are aging, so we don't know how it will happen, what could be the scenarios. And that's, I think, something that guided the principle of, let me say, understanding how we can support the healthy lives of not simply people who get old. We will be 2 billion over 60 by 2050. But let me say the word longevity that sits behind the CT is the journey of life, because we know that every actions that we take over our life, and even before we are born, is influencing our process of longevity. Now, just to clarify, longevity is not live forever. Longevity is live healthier as long as possible. Hence, we can enjoy life, we can contribute to others, we can be part of our best and provide feedback to others of all our knowledge and expertise. Now, as you said, we, let me say, transition as humanity from rural areas mainly to urban areas, and people are aging in urban areas. So what city can do? So far, a lot of work has been done mainly in somehow, let me say, adapting the city to an aging demographic. We are getting older and cities are adapting. Let me do the classic simple example, which is more benches, more bathrooms, more spaces to, let me say, welcome an aging demographic. But what if we can do the other way around? What if cities could become the proactive actor that can help people living healthier, longer lives? Think what you do every day in the city. You take a bus, you go on the metro, you eat something in a bar, you are working in an office, and that office typically is a building inside the city, so that employer in that office has an impact over your longevity. So if you see from this perspective, every action, every touch point has a meaning in your trajectory of longevity. And at the same time, it happens in a very different way. From a spiritual perspective, cultural perspective, if you are an Italian, probably the aperitivo time at 7 p.m. is a kind of a ritual that has an influence in your longevity. Or at 5 o'clock, your teacup in the UK. So there are, let me say, ways on how you behave that somehow could be influenced and supported. And the other thing that we try to dismantle is the idea that your behaviors are on your shoulders only. Your behaviors are influenced by societal factors. There's a classic number I always quote. In Chicago, there are 30 years of different life expectancy in 2 neighborhoods. It's one of the, let me say, literature case that tells us in the same city, under the same name of the city, people live 30 years less than others. There are economic and cultural factor and societal factors that combined together influence the behaviors. Now, what was missing, and that's our obsession to try to translate this theory in something practical, it's something flexible enough to adapt to the different, and thanks for showing it, to adapt to different cultures, logical ways on how you provide what we have defined as formulas for longevity. You see this resemble like a periodic table. And we thought that the periodic table metaphor was the closest thing to combine elements from very different domains. But when you put it together, you can have air or water. Think about the periodic table. And air or water are generated by elements that belong to the table. So we were thinking, why don't we do the same? So what we did is just to try to source all the evidence of the elements that help us living healthier, longer lives, decoded them, put them in a kind of a frame that you see, and help cities together with citizens, which I think is so important, to design the formulas for longevity. Hence, you could help cities to somehow tackle the classic challenges they have. For example, you can help cities to reduce the risk of obesity in students in universities, or you can help cities to reduce the risk of isolation that happen in city. So just think of what could be an issue you have in the city. Keep people more active, keep people more engaged, educate about good behaviors, try to dismantle societal inequalities. All this could be coded in what we have defined as formulas. And then help cities to start playing from the formula to deploy actions in the city. You see that what is important here is just we try to give first of all, a flexible tool. Second is sharing the knowledge. What I'm doing in Cape Town could be used in Anchorage in Alaska, adapting the different cultural factors that how this tool allows us to do it, create a common coding naming, which is missing today. You can call an action in one way, and it's the same action that may be deployed in a different way from somewhere else. So we're creating the base ground that will help, hopefully, cities together with the citizens, sorry, just underline this point, to design those formulas. Now, what you could see seems a little complicated. That's where AI comes handy. We are building a sort of a large language model based on the evidence that will allow to write a prompt. One of the questions I was just saying before, how we can help cities to reduce the risk of obesity for students, for example. And the tools source out what could be the right elements to be combined, many of those, so that then you still have a step which is human. So that's the humans in the loop in an AI type of process, where the elements suggest potential solutions, and then the discussion to design that solution is the process that we suggest. Now, the city you have mentioned are trailblazing cities, and I invite everyone in the call that would like to join this stage. Why? I think you understand that this is something quite new on how a city should have to look and design their future. What it's missing in all these projects, and I'm sure that everyone in the call will agree with me, it's a lack of orchestration. You have many departments, and that's what Tuya was saying before, you have all this bureaucracy, you think that the domain, think about the council or in the city of transportation has nothing to do with longevity. It's absolutely the opposite. Every councilor, so every domain has an impact of longevity. If we follow the Cicero Maxima, which is Salus Populis Suprema Lex Exto, which means the health and the welfare of the population should be the supreme law. If this is the end goal, everyone is, let me say, called to do something. So somehow I think our work is raising the point that you need an orchestrator to put together the different domains. And we had one amazing achievement that I want to say. One of the cities we're working is Bergamo. It's a small city nearby Milano. It's 120,000 people. And after we worked together with them, they nominated the first ever counselor of longevity, which formally was the previous, was the assessor of public policies. But they understood that they needed an orchestrator, a coordinator of the different offices. And we're so proud because you see how city could adapt and design better policies because they understand that longevity is not made by one domain. It's not healthcare. It's everything together, of which healthcare is the outcome.
Wow, fascinating. So basically your platform could be helping Tuya in Suva to say, hey, yes, what is Nsah's neighborhood in Yaoundé doing for a healthier population? Let's apply that as well. And you have seen it develop so far that your platform, your project sparked a city and is sparking more cities now to actually create new positions to do that. And I love your call to action to say cities should be there for us to be healthy and to live healthy lives. That's what should be their primary goal. And you also, maybe to just add one thing, Nick, you told me preparing for today that even the food delivery apps that we use and love to use in bad weather in cities, even those can have a huge impact. So maybe just share that one example with us. What were you saying about how cities can work with food delivery apps to make people healthier?
I think Tuya opened the door how we should have to see innovation. We have to look what is happening in our life. Because if you go and look about nutrition policies, for example, and you look at the documents around, they're ignoring that we're changing our behaviors and moods. Now, today, food deliveries is becoming a way on how not simply younger generation, older generation are consuming their food. Their nutrition somehow is relying on the food delivery. Now, there is a beautiful study from Nsah in UK that suggests that if you put, let me say, healthier food, salads, let me say, on top of the menus of these food delivery companies, you can reduce by 15% the risk of obesity in the consumers. it's interesting because these platforms own a lot of data about our nutrition, but today they are totally ignored by, let me say, the academic research system, but also the policymakers, which are thinking, oh, nutrition should have to go through this process, not looking at we as citizens are changing our behaviors due to, I mean, innovation, data, you know, the story. Tuya said so beautifully before. And we should have to observe how we're changing our moods and intervene there instead of thinking that our longevity is, let me say, hold inside a box and it's owned by, you know, some policymakers somewhere. Life is a different thing, and that's how the job we're doing is just try to decode life in its micro granularity, that it's more or less that mapping I've seen before.
Fascinating. You also brought a big question to us today, Nick. What is the perception of older people? And we defined it as, it's important, 65 plus. In your part of the world, we have almost the entire globe today joining in terms of time zones. So we would love to collect some impressions, some reflections, some thoughts, maybe examples that you all have from your own lives and your own neighborhoods and your own peer groups. What is the perception of older people in your part of the world? And Tuya and Nsah, I'm going to ask you to chime in. Maybe you have a spontaneous thought on this. I know you spent many time in your project about working with different generations. Tuya, any spontaneous thoughts?
Oh, thank you so much. It was fascinating to listen to, Nick. So wonderful. I learned a lot. Well, it really reminded me of this concept of blue township that's springing about for example, in Fiji, in one of the remote areas called Sabu Sabu. And this is where that township is trying to reimagine like an artisanal or artisan economy where you know, people of all ages are engaged in traditional kind of local type of work, but also you know, food creation, because a lot of the Pacific food was quite healthy in the past. But nowadays, even young people are suffering from diabetes. So the perception of you know, the older people in the Pacific, you know, unfortunately, is that, you know, somebody, you know, who has you know, wounds on the legs, hard time walking because of the non-communicable diseases that they're suffering from, right? So it really, you know, just made me think of how many lives could be saved if this, you know, notion of longevity can also be discussed at a more global scale. And Nick talked about you know, healthy, of course, eating, but also looking at circularity of economy. Local food production plays an important role, but also remembering how we used to eat in the olden times.
Yeah, fascinating. Nick, sorry.
No, I was just saying that's absolutely fascinating. And you see, and it's exactly what we're just trying to trigger in the answer that we're seeing. There's a burden, which is the stereotypical ways on how in some part of the world we see an aging demographic, just like something that we don't need because they're just going to die. So why we need them? And on the other side is what I call the wisdom dividend. So it's this kind of a layer of experience that it's one of the biggest treasure that we have today. Moreover, in a time of AI, where asking the right question and understanding the right, and decoding the feedback, it's probably one of the biggest skill that we tend not to still to recognize.
Nsah, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. So this immediately strikes a chord in me and makes me think about something that is much talked about, but also sometimes skipped when it comes to demographic shifts within the foresight space. Because when we talk about Africa, let's take Africa, everyone knows that Africa has a very big proportion of young people. So the focus is really on young people, which of course is necessary and important, but people hardly begin to get these hard discussions that, okay, in the next 40 years, in the next 50 years, it means that we are also going to have as huge a population of old people as we have young people today in Africa. And so that's something that's a conversation that I think is not being had enough. And then it also strikes me in the sense that I'm witnessing a gradual shift up till now. For the majority of people in African countries, I'm speaking from the experience of Cameroon, we consider all the people as from 65 upwards as being repositories of wisdom, and we don't care for the elderly in the same way that we do here in Europe, because, for example, we believe in a proverb in my indigenous language that says that when a sheep gets old, it sucks the young sheep. So the young sheep tends to become the parent, and so we live all our lives with our grandparents. They don't go to care homes. But I'm also beginning to wonder what that will look like in the future as we begin to have more and more old people, and then more and more people in the cities, and then also with things that come up sometimes, like conflicts that push people to run away, leaving behind their parents or their grandparents, and also things that will come along, like with displacement and movement linked to climate change, rising sea levels, or even hotter temperatures.
Thank you, Nsah. And it's very beautifully illustrated here in all your contributions. Thank you for being a part of the conversation here. Thank you for sharing from your parts of the world. It seems very two-sided of how the elderly are looked at. And Nick, thank you for giving us this amazing vision of a future where cities learn from each other and can hopefully break some of the barriers that we also see here emerging from the contributions. And Nsah, as you were just talking about your part of the world, let's move over to your project, because you have worked with multi-generations. You based it on your own thesis. You wrote your thesis about, can literature save the Congo Basin? Your thesis already won awards. Then you got further support stipends to turn your thesis into action. You realized that you need to do more, that you need to bring people together, and you became a next generation foresight practitioner. The University of Cologne invited you to work on a UNESCO program, and you did a lot. You published a story collection. It's beautiful. We will share some screenshots here in a second. Stories from the futures of the Congo Basin, where you combine dystopian and utopian futures. If you were here for the Dubai Future Horizons session on science fiction, maybe you remember utopian stories are much harder to write than dystopian stories. That's why we see so much dystopia out there in the world. And you did not only that, Nsah, you went further than that. And while we look at the beautiful publication that you put out there, we see and could see that you started bringing humans together, and you held intergenerational workshops in Yaoundé, in the capital of your home country of Cameroon, that even included local kings, tribal leaders from the northwest of your home country that is part of the Congo Basin. So Liz is going to switch us over into the workshops, and maybe Nsah, you can help us understand what has turned into action from your work, and how did you do it?
Thank you so much, Felix. I think you've already mentioned a couple of things that I would consider as action, because action is also quite relative how we define it, and action is ongoing. And this project in itself is considered as being organic, as being a living thing, and it's continuing, it's in the progress. We've had physical workshops in Yaoundé, as you said, but we started off by having workshops online. So we've had a mix of both online and on-site workshops. And but we plan that funding permitted, if funding permits, this program has to also have on-site workshops in other countries of the Congo Basin. And talking about other countries, the Congo Basin is the second largest tropical rainforest in the world after the Amazon. And for a long time, it used to be called the second lung of the earth, and we were assuming that the Amazon is the first lung of the earth. But now, with deforestation being higher in the Amazon, so it is increasingly being considered that the Congo Basin is the first lung of the earth now. And the Congo Basin is cuts across 6 countries. If we go by the strictest definition, that would include Cameroon, where I come from, Gabon, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, and then the 2 Congos, Congo Kinshasa or Democratic Republic, and Congo Brazzaville. But there are more expansive definitions of the Congo Basin that could include Nigeria, Chad, Uganda, Rwanda, and then down to Angola. But the important thing I wanted to say here is that The Congo Basin is very important, but quite often people even within the Congo Basin seem not to be aware of the existence of such a thing. And when you mention it, some people immediately put in international but also national sectors, we think you are talking about something that belongs only to the Congo or one of the Congos. So this basin is of crucial importance in terms of biodiversity. We host over 10% of global biodiversity. Is critical. It contains a lot of critical minerals, which also explain why we have the almost never-ending wars, like the war in Northeast DRC, that is purely a war in search of minerals. So, but it's also critical for other things like timber. But quite often, we seem not to take into consideration the importance of it in terms of sequestrating carbon. The Congo Basin so far has the largest peatlands on Earth, and these peatlands are estimated to store about 3 years of global carbon emissions. That is enormous. It means that this is a huge toll in the global fight against climate change. But again, most discussions about the Congo Basin usually happen at a very high level, maybe in the COPs with a few national representatives of government, but the people who are often also sidelined and ignored, because often the gaze and the camera comes in and it is focusing on the biodiversity, is focusing on these things, and then be zooming out the people who contribute to not only the biodiversity, but also the cultural diversity of the basin. So we came together with support from School of International Futures, University of Cologne, etc. And we said, let's examine what alternative futures do we have for the Congo Basin in different terms. So we have come up with a number of things, because this is quite broad as a topic. It means that we are looking at things like governance, democracy, peace, biodiversity protection, environmental protection, youth, employment, education, healthcare, etc. And so far, as you rightly said, some of the outputs include this story collection, which has been translated into French. And then we are also working on a poetry anthology, which would include some poems that came from out of the workshops. And some of the participants are already also considering working with me towards the line of why not musicalize foresight, why not also use music to push visions of the future and work and awareness around these issues. So I would say that that's like the more individual dimension of the actions that are taking place as a result of this project. But we can then go to what I would consider also collective action, in the sense that the project is inspiring like a rhizome. It is inspiring and bringing more people into foresight, because one of the things, the goals I had actually for this was not just to have contributions coming from the grassroots, coming from people at the bottom, and then trying to shape in a policy at both the bottom and the top level, but it was also trying to spread or to democratize foresight within the region. And so far we've had a forum called the Friends of Foresight in Cameroon with over 20 members. So far we've also launched the longest participatory vision initiative for Africa, called Vision Africa 2525. That's 500 years into the future. And then we will soon be starting sporting activities for future generations and long-term governance, which all of these things, of course, are anchored on foresight and strategic foresight. Still in a more collective dimension, we've been working with some of the kings that you mentioned who participated in these workshops. We have been working with them to create commissions for future generations. We started with Mbasa, where I come from. I'm the chairperson of the commission, but we have other commissions in the kingdoms of Ajung, the kingdoms of Dinoni, the kingdoms of Nka, and all of this. We will be moving towards eventually having some kind of a national platform of initiatives, local and indigenous initiatives, including municipal initiatives for future generations and governance in Cameroon, including foresight. But I want to wrap it up by focusing more on one of the flagship aspects of this project, which was based on biodiversity, because there is a species of animals in Cameroon which are called royal animals, particularly within the kings of the northwestern grass fields of Cameroon. These are animals like the lion, the leopard, the elephant, and then an emblematic and endemic bird that we call the Bannerman's Turako with red feathers that are used like some kind of military epaulets. All these animals are critically endangered. All these animals are protected by international conventions and national laws, but because there are different layers of governance in countries like Cameroon, and people often end maybe at the lowest level for people, usually like the municipality, and people don't understand that we have powerful centralized kingdoms that predate colonization in Cameroon, with powerful kings and other governance institutions like the Quifon, which is like a traditional national assembly. What happens is that then these laws have been existing but people continue to hunt these animals, because when they hunt them, they get rewarded traditionally. And so you cannot fight this phenomenon if you don't involve the kings and the governance structures with whom they work. And that's why we brought together these kings and then different participants across the age groups and professions, and we came out with a series of recommendations as to how we may be able to protect royal animals or to sustainably manage them. So these recommendations are forthcoming in a peer-reviewed article, but we are also at this moment trying to navigate the indigenous bureaucracies, I would say, because it's not like a king would not just jump up and do something alone. The king rules together with his council or the assembly, which is the Quifon. So we are now working around this to see how we will navigate these, explore opportunities, and then go into practical implementation of these policy recommendations, starting with some of these specific kingdoms, and hoping that then this inspires other kingdoms and could also inspire a more regional movement in protection of biodiversity in general and these kinds of royal animals in particular.
6 countries, many tribal leaders, many bureaucratic hurdles that you were tackling, Nsah. And you also brought a question to us today that I thought is fascinating for this global community that is in the room right now. Nsah is asking, how do you create allies and entry points to influence public policy with your foresight work as an outsider to established circles of power? How do you actually do that? Maybe one of you has an idea, an example, a recommendation. We have our Menti question in the chat for you right now, and we look forward to your contributions. And as Katarina just asked, yes, of course, we will share the results of what you are giving here, what you're sharing in your own wisdom via our WhatsApp community. So the contributions don't just exist in this live session. We will share them with you afterwards. And we would love to hear if you have any advice for Nsah and for everybody else who is trying to break into circles of power, to is doing bringing foresight work to what we can consider outsiders. How do you create allies and entry points and influence public policy? That is what Nsah would like to know. And Tuya and Nick, maybe you have advice for Nsah?
Nsah, that was very beautiful. Thank you so very much. It also very deeply resonates with the conversation that we are having right now, and also the Pacifica Futures report. I just wanted to give you one example, perhaps, in which the Pacific youth who were students from all over the Pacific, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, regular students at the University of South Pacific right here in Suva. Actually, I live just 5 minutes away. They started deliberating on climate justice and looking at futures, scenarios on what climate justice should look like. So of course they never gave up. I really, they really inspire me on a daily basis. And I don't know if you know about this, but just late last year, there was a ruling at the International Court of Justice, the highest, in a way, court of the world, in which the Pacific-led, youth-led climate advocacy actually resulted in the advisory opinion on the obligations of states in respect to climate change, that actually states have obligation to respond to climate change, but also to take action in terms of protecting and saving biodiversity. So in a way, they are complete outsiders. I mean, I see them hanging out on the seawall almost on a daily basis, having some very, vigorous debates. And how did they persist, and also, but how did they, in a way, bring together the leaders so that they can continuously raise their voices at the Conference of Parties, or that's COP, the climate conferences and all of that, right? So in a way, they try to have a multi-pronged approach, not just, advocacy, not just protest, but also debates, deliberations, also, evidence-based data collection and also showcasing real stories of the people. So I would love to share more or also introduce you to some of these inspiring students who are now leaders themselves in their own right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tuya. And Kitty is just sharing here in the chat. It is important to become an insider first by building relationships, living with community, becoming a member, to understand the whole challenges from a lived experience before impacting policy. We have more contributions about joining events that the powerful are speaking at, participate in them, get to know them, get close to them, establish share common ground or concerns to collaborate, translate foresight into narratives. I think, Nsah, you were already relaying to that, and cultivate communities of interest. Lots of good advice here. And we're so happy that you're all taking the time to be here. We're almost at the end of today's session, but I would not want to let you go without a last question. We always see what comes in terms of questions when people sign up. And there was one question that was upvoted above all. And this question is, what is the missing link between foresight and action in most institutions, and how can leaders close that gap? I feel like we have now seen a few examples from our guests today, but maybe you also want to share your own example from your own foresight work. So we want to take 5 more minutes to see if anybody from the community wants to step forward and share their own examples. It's really easy to do. You just use the raise hand button in the Zoom menu bar. It's if you click on the little heart that says reactions in your Zoom language, you can raise your hand and we will see if you want to join us on stage. DJ Hourglass is playing some music here in the background to see who wants to step forward. We have about 5 minutes left. If you want to share, how can leaders close the gap between foresight and action in institutions? If you have an example from your own work, I see Sanja is here. Hi, Sanja. Welcome to Horizons. What would you like to share with us?
Nice greetings from Croatia. It is really a pleasure to be here. Lots of great experiences. Just an example of our project, which is not, of course, so big as you presented, but quite interesting. We had the project funded by EU, although not big funding, a small one, that united 5 countries, including universities, hospitals, specialists of diabetology, nutritionists, and so on, in prevention of obesity, of student obesity. In Europe, this is a huge problem, and Croatia is always at the top 3 countries in Europe or in the world. So we have big problems with obesity, and we created various resources, multilingual, which are available online on 6 languages, and conducted various researches among several thousand of students. And what is interesting is that situation is very similar in different types of countries, Mediterranean, not Mediterranean, inland, and so on. Now we apply for the continuation of this project, but those results were quite interesting.
Wow, thank you, Sanja. Such a fascinating example for how you bring different communities together, do research, and then turn it into action and tackle a huge problem. I think Nick and Sanja, you would have hours to talk to after this session about who you might be able to collaborate. Thank you for sharing, Sanja.
Thank you.
And Jasmine is also here to share. Hi, Jasmine, or Yasmin. Welcome to Horizons.
Yes, hello, Bob. Thank you very much for the exposure. So I think one of the most important things, which is, as we heard before, already happening, but I think is missing still much more, is to go back to the grassroots community, people which are really tackling the issues on the ground. And we have a lot of, very big conferences with very high level, UN, for example, and other places like this. But what really makes a big difference, I think, are the heroes on ground. And to connect these much more globally as well, can widen the vision for the different countries, can see different solutions, and more than anything else can collab, because there's a lot of issues nowadays on all levels, whether we're going to, animal kingdom or nature or, the elements, looking at plastic or air pollutions. They are really trans-global. So, the heroes on ground, the grassroots leaders, need to connect and work together, because quite often, because of political resistances and other visions that the political systems have, they prevent or even hinder these kind of actions. So to bring these grassroots groups together, I think would be imperative and very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I'm so glad that this is sort of a pattern that's emerging from today's session, and that also our guests here have shown how it works. We have time for one more share, so I'm going to ask Murshid to join us on stage. Murshid, what would you like to share with us today on Horizons? Welcome to the session.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. This is me, Murshid, from Myanmar, currently residing in Bangladesh.
Welcome. What would you like to share with us, Murshid? How have you found yourself closing the gap between foresight and action?
Yeah. I'd like to share something that link between foresight and action in most institution is the implementation, the ability to translate insight into a very concrete action and decision that measure how the outcome, the immeasurable outcomes will come. Organizations and leaders often anticipate trend between the foresight and action or risks, but they always fail to act due to the unclear accountability and some resources constraint like that. Leaders can close this gap by using some ways, like turning foresight into priorities, defining a very actionable and clear metrics, assigning accountability, and integrating into a strategy, and piloting the iterating, tested.
Thank you.
Like testing a small initiative. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Murshid. Thank you so much for being a part of the session today. And I would like to thank all of you who raised their hands. I know that we could stay on here for hours. Just with our guests, we could have filled 3 hours easily. And I hope that you took away some insights for your own futuring from these short insights into big global projects that won the Dubai Foresight Awards in their inaugural season. I'm going to ask Patrick Noack back to the stage from the Dubai Future Foundation. Patrick, you have been listening mostly for this hour. What stood out to you?
Well, a few things. I really think we're onto something. We've selected outstanding winners. So before I reflect very briefly on the 3 projects, I just wanted to recognize a panel of judges that has helped us identify and work through the applications and then ultimately select the 3 winning entries. And I think we have Stephen Kenny on the call here as well, who's part of that process. So yes, I think we're really onto something. The 3 winning entries here are incredibly strong. What I loved about each of them is exactly being able to deliver impact in the categories for which they have applied. So the work, for example, that Nsah has submitted on Foresight for the Planet is a quintessential foresight project because it is about a common good. And common goods are, by definition, really hard to achieve and maintain. And the Foresight project is just the ideal way of going about this. In the category of Foresight for People, that the project that Nick and colleagues have submitted on Cities of Longevity is just so incredibly important because it speaks about 2 major structural drivers of our societies, cities and demography. And those 2 pieces come together so well, and they have real global impact. So it's not just about tinkering here and there on the edges, but it is something that is entirely transferable. So we absolutely loved the global transferability of this piece of work. And then, of course, the Changemakers Award for that we saw on the Pacifica Futures Forum and the report. What we really liked about this, Tuya, is of course the big bets. And one of the things I wanted to mention is two things. One is, as you mentioned, foresight is part of the culture, and your work has really harnessed that. And as Felix said at the onset, if you were to draw a line around all of the countries that comprise the Pacific Islands, the size, the size of the reality, the size of the futures, and the size of the challenge is enormous, even though it's a handful of people. So the importance of the work that you're doing just cannot be overstated, I think. The last thing on this is, I think it's a great example of what can be achieved in small countries. Very quick to experiment, very quick to ideate and prototype, and then very quick to adapt. So there's a lot of learning from that as well. So in summary, I'm super excited, incredibly happy to have had this conversation. It's a conversation that will continue. We have been in touch with all three on the call here, and we're going to engage to further seek to profile the work that you do and engage with you at the forum this November again. Thank you for being with us on this journey.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and your team for making sure this space exists. And as you just mentioned, the forum, the awards are coming back. You already revealed that. We're all curious to hear what you have in store this year, because you're experimenting yourselves. You're changing things. You're inventing the whole thing from scratch, it seems like, every year. So is there anything you would like to share with us about the forum? Anything you can reveal yet?
So I'd just like to recognize the forum team as well. I think many of the team are on the call here as well. We are knee deep, as we always are. It's a 12-month exercise to get the forum off the ground. So we're knee deep in the planning and the structures and the conceptualization around it. I think it's too early for us to give any specifics, but I would really say, put the date in your calendar. This is going to be our 5th edition. So you should really expect something exciting again happening this year. So watch this space. There'll be announcements coming, I think, relatively soon, certainly by February. I know that on the awards webpage, we are going to make that open. We're going to open the submission page in May, and it'll follow a very similar cycle again. So a handful of dates, but we will announce them. They're not going to be flying under the radar, as you can expect.
Wow. Okay. I'm excited now. And if you would like to know anything about the forum or the awards, please reach out. The contact information from the team is about to pop up in the chat here. forum@dubaifuture.ae is where you can get all your information. And now I'm going to invite you all to perk up your ears, because we're going to listen again to music from Tuvalu that was performed live at the Pacifica Futures Forum. And we are closing the session by inviting you all to say goodbye to one another, to Iman and Isabella and the Dubai Future Foundation team, to Patrick, to Nsah Mala, and to, of course, Jade, who led our mindfulness session, to Liz, our producer, to Jaleesa, aka DJ Hourglass, to our live stream specialist, Tim, and to our amazing guests, Tuya, Altangerel, Nicola Palmarini, and Nsah Mala. We're so grateful for your time, you all. And if you all want to go off mute right now and say goodbye to each other in your preferred language, please do, while the sounds from Tuvalu are fading in. Auf Wiedersehen. It was a pleasure to host you. I'm Felix, and we're so grateful for everyone
Ciao,
here.
grazie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Au revoir, merci. Dankeschön.